Hi everybody, this is Mark Jager. Today we're going to be talking about conceptual musical instruments throughout history. The first person we're going to cover is a man named Athanasius Kircher, who was a radical scholar from the 1600s. Kircher came up with an idea called the organ of the world's creation. And in this illustration, Kircher viewed the organ as the entire universe, and the person playing the organ was the creator of the universe himself. So the idea was that there was large pipes coming up off of this pipe organ, as you can see on the illustration. And as the sound would come up through the pipes, it would bring things into manifestation in a sort of cymatic type of method. So the first thing that happens is the first chord is sounded, and up comes the sound, and light is separated from darkness. On the second day of creation, in his opinion, in his idea, another chord was sounded, the sound comes up, and the waters separate from the dry land. And then guess what? Day 3 comes along, another chord is sounded, and vegetation appears upon the earth. Day 4, along comes the sun, moon, and stars in the heavens. Day 5, you guessed it, yet another chord is sounded, and the water animals come forth, the great sea whales and what have you. And then day 6, the final chord is struck, and along comes man. And of course, the 7th day was a day of rest. Then after each individual chord was struck, they were all played together, showing that each element of creation were all one vast harmonic structure working together. Another scholar during the Renaissance who came up with a conceptual musical instrument was a man named Robert Fludd. In 1618, he published a book, and in it was an illustration called the celestial monocord. This was an amazing instrument that stretched all the way from earth up to heaven itself. It was connected by one string that connected the earth, the universe, and the spirit world all in one vast harmonic structure. As you'd go up the fretboard, you would have different levels of frets, and on each fret he would have a planet, and each planet had its own vibration that it sounded until you got up to the world of the angels. And when you got up to the world of the angels, they were all categorized into different types of angels, which were each considered by him to be a fret on this vast instrument. As you can see up at the top of this illustration, there's actually a divine hand coming down from a cloud and tuning the entire instrument from heaven. On the right side of this instrument, you'll see musical notes going up. Towards the middle, you see various elements starting at the bottom with earth, water, air, and fire going up eventually to the planets, and then all the way up to the spirit world. One vast harmonic structure, all being tuned by the divine hand. Just 1 year after Fludd published his book, the great astronomer Johannes Kepler published a book called Harmonies of the World. And in this book, Kepler brought forth the idea of a huge conceptual musical instrument, and that would be that our entire solar system was a musical instrument. In this model, Kepler placed Jupiter and Saturn as being base instruments in a solar system symphony. Jupiter and Saturn move slower in their orbits around the sun, so he had them as bass instruments in this orchestra. He had Mars as a tenor, Earth and Venus as altos, and Mercury as a soprano. The sun, which was the center of all the activity, was considered the conductor of the symphony. Kepler even went so far as to place the movements of planets on sheet music, and that is how he came up with the idea of the music of the spheres. He had gained some of this knowledge from Pythagoras in a more remote time. Johannes Kepler's idea that the entire solar system was a musical instrument became even larger, and this solar system instrument became incorporated into a still larger instrument. And that was an instrument comprising all of reality, like the ultimate musical instrument. And there were many people during the Renaissance who seen things in this way. In this model, the creator of the universe himself was seen as the master musician, the choir director of all the harmony of all of reality. He was at the top on the podium directing this entire symphony. Beneath him were the world of angels, who were all viewed as being musical in their capabilities. Beneath the angel section was another section. That was the entire universe, not just the solar system like what Kepler is talking about, but the entire universe viewed as a musical instrument, which some seen as being played by the spiritual beings. And then you get back to the solar system instrument, which we were just talking about, Johannes Kepler's idea of the music of the spheres. And then going beneath that, you'd come all the way down to the human instrument. There were those who, such as Jacob Boehme, who believed that human beings themselves were musical instruments. And you could tell by talking to a person whether they were a disharmonious or harmonious being by how well they obeyed universal law, divine law, or how much they didn't. Beneath the human instrument, all of the different animals were viewed as being musical in their capabilities and behaviors. In fact, Martin Luther once said that there is music in every flower and every bit of creation that there is. Going down from the animal instrument, you get to the plant instrument, and then finally all the way down to the bottom to the mineral elemental instrument. In the end, all of these sections joined together to make one grand symphony, which was one amazing instrument of divine harmony. During the Renaissance, there was a revival of ancient musical wisdom. These centered primarily around Pythagoras and Plato, but they also drew upon the wisdom of the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Hebrews and the Romans. There was a Roman philosopher and senator named Boethius, and he came up with this idea of 3 different types of music. This was the music of the planets and the stars, the music of the soul and human body, and the music of man-made instruments, as you can see depicted on this chart. We will continue now on our investigation of the connection between music and the universe. The Greek philosopher Plato also came up with the conceptual musical instrument, which I refer to as Plato's cosmic bowls. What this instrument consisted of was a glass spindle, and on this glass spindle were bowls. The bottom bowls were the largest, and then as you'd go up the spindle, the bowls would become smaller and smaller, with each of them kind of a bit inset within one another, as you can see on this graph. And what the idea was that there was a muse, or some type of a musical being, that was traveling with the planets around the rims of these bowls. The circular rim of the bowl was likened to the orbit of a planet. And as that planet ran along that rim of that bowl, it would sound one of the music notes. At that time, they knew of 7 orbs in our solar system, and Plato gave a musical note and pitch to each one of those planets and personified the entire thing, conceptualized the whole thing in this instrument of a spindle with glass bowls on it. If you've ever had a wine glass and ran your finger around the rim of the wine glass and heard the sound that it made, you get the idea. In later years, Benjamin Franklin made his instrument called the glass harmonica, and which operated in the same way as this. So I think this is an interesting thing that he did, but it's just one of many of the ideas that they had concerning the connection between music and the universe. Plato wasn't the only Greek who had an idea for a conceptual musical instrument. The Greeks also had other ideas, and one of them was the 7-string lyre of Apollo. And on this model, as you can see in the illustration, there is a harp with 7 strings. Well, each of the strings to them represented a planet, because at that time they only knew of 7 orbs in our solar system. And you can also go to the Hebrews, or the certain sects of Jewish people who believed in this 10-string lyre of King David. And on this particular instrument, as you can see on the graph, the idea was that music was unseen. Music was unheard in the invisible realm until a divine hand plucked the string. And when a divine hand plucked the string, that which was inaudible became audible, or that which was invisible became visible. And when it became visible, the vibration brought forth all types of different beings and planets and all of creation coming into manifestation through the vibrations. So one may wonder, if there was all of this idea of the music itself, or the universe itself being a musical instrument, where do human beings fit into this scheme? Well, human beings were seen as being instruments as well. And one of the graphs that they came up with during the Renaissance was something called the human monocord. And you can see on these graphs here that are all about the human body, human anatomy, that they viewed the human body as a musical instrument. And on one of the sides here, you can see music notes running up one of the sides, showing that they categorized different parts of the body with different musical notes, and also at the same time, they connected it with outer space. So they seen the music of the spheres, and then the human body, being a microcosm of the universe, was also seen as a musical instrument that was meant to be incorporated into the larger instrument of the music of the spheres. So you had the music of the spheres without and the music of the spheres within. And the idea was that fallen mankind had to get back in tune with the harmony of the universe. And that concludes what I have for you today on ancient man and their conceptual musical instruments. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you in the next one. I'd like to take a minute to ask you to like and subscribe to this channel, because there's more information to come on the amazing and wonderful connection between our magnificent universe and music.